Howdy there neighbors, Ian with eTrailer here. Today we're going to be installing the Demco Air Force One on our 2023 Subaru Crosstrek. Let's get into a few features of that and then the install. And the Demco Air Force One here is going to be your primary option if you've got air brakes on the RV side of it. So if not, check out the Stay and Play Duo. It's going to be a great option for those hydraulic brakes. But getting into the Demco Air Force One and its features is that great option for our braking system that's going to be permanent. We don't have to deal with the portable system of lugging that in and out every time when we get to the campsite. It just ends up being more cumbersome than just having a permanent option in your vehicle. And as I said before, since this is a more permanent option than our removable brake systems, it's going to have that little cylinder that lives there on top of the brake pedal, which is going to actuate the brake pedal when we apply that up in the RV. Did want to mention as well that that is a proportional system that will be applying as much brake pedal here at the towed vehicle as you apply up in the RV. In my opinion, one of the best features about this Air Force One is going to be our coach link. Instead of there being something on the vehicle that we're towing that we'd have to see in our rear view camera, we've just got this nice indicator that will light up when we've got the brakes applied, and then of course turn off once they're not applied. I just like that option better because with the lights that go on the towed vehicle, it's going to be very difficult to see in the daytime. This isn't going to have any issue at all, and also has a buzzer warning that if it's on for too long, it's going to set off that buzzer, let you know either something's wrong or just that the brakes have been applied for a longer period of time than the controller's used to. So going through the system on the towed vehicle, we're going to start at our supply line that comes from the RV. Your kit is going to include both of these fittings and our hose to be able to just quickly connect to our air supply. And then once that's there, we run our lines over to our controller here, which is going to take in our supply air from the RV and then feed that to our brake cylinder. This is also tied into the vacuum system on the vehicle, but very, very easy to connect. And as you see here, all of these connections and fittings all come with the kit. Another great feature of the Air Force One is going to be the safety breakaway switch. So if there's ever a catastrophic failure that would cause the vehicle we're towing to be disconnected, it will also pull this safety breakaway switch, thus slowing the vehicle and bringing it to a complete stop, avoiding any more problems. While we're talking about flat tows, there's going to be 5 main components we need to make sure we've got to be able to flat tow our vehicle. Of course, the base plate on the vehicle that's going to hold our tow bar to the vehicle. So that tow bar is our second piece here. We've got our third, which is going to be the safety chains, of course. And then the fourth being our towable vehicle wiring and the braking system. So those 5 components are the main 5 you will need to be able to flat tow your vehicle. And while we're talking about setting up your flat tow, let's go ahead and get into that install. I wouldn't say that the Air Force One here is that bad of an install, probably a few hours at most. And just following us through the video is going to be a great option if it's something you want to do yourself. But if it's not something you feel like you want to tackle after watching the video, please do check our dealer locator, and we'd be happy to find you a trained professional that would be more than happy to put that on for you. To get going on our installation, we've got a couple things at the front of the vehicle we're going to need to find mounting places for. Lucky for us, the base plate is already on, and they've already got our 7-way here. So we don't need to worry about any of that, but I am going to use this existing mounting spot for our 7-pole here, and that will be what we use to mount the air chuck that's going to hook to the airline up at the RV. So I'm just going to use an upside down bracket that I've got a couple holes drilled in the top to match our bracket that comes with the fitting. It'll already be pre-assembled. So that's going to live there. And then we also need to find a home for our breakaway switch as well. So we did use the existing mount on our Roadmaster base plate that was already on the vehicle for our safety breakaway switch here. So next we'll need to mount the controller box here. What I've found is there's going to be a couple options. That can either be mounted up in between where the radiator and the front fascia are going to live, but since we've already got our base plate on and all that's put back together, no reason to take it apart. We've got a perfectly good living space here on top of our fuse panel. And so I've just used the cover and lined up the holes that exist on the brackets for the controller, drilled those out, and then just added some hardware that we had here around the shop. Then we did want to make sure it clears the hood, of course. So with the unit just set on top of it, we placed a piece of flat cardboard with no blemishes on it, and then gently closed the hood here just to make sure we were going to have full clearance. We'd see any depressions or any marks from anything that wouldn't clear and not allow that box to live there. Now, unfortunately for our cylinder, we are under the dash, so it's kind of a cramped area, and we're going to do this as an overview of how we've mounted up that cylinder. I started by finding a good place towards the back where the anchor point for our cable was going to live, and we did have to cut back some of the existing sound deadening material back there. It is mentioned in the instructions, but worth noting that to be able to mount the 3-hole bracket that they give you, you will want a nice flat, even surface up against metal. So we cut a little bit of that back, and then I got the cable just kind of mocked up where it needed to be roughly. Of course, once we've got everything together and actuated a few times, it's going to put enough pressure on it that it may cause some movement. We may need to readjust. So right now, this is just a rough estimation of where we're going to be. And then I've also got it tightened about midway down the pedal. There are measurements within the instructions that'll kind of walk you through how far that cable needs to be away and the tension for it. But it's just at the point of being taut, but not too taut to where it's going to wear the cable prematurely over time there. Then the bracket on the cylinder is going to be held on with those 4 10mm bolts there. Of course, again, we're just going to get those snug enough to mimic the rested position there with the cylinder completely closed and that the cable nice and taut there. And then that back bracket, they give you a set of 3 10mm self-tappers. The intention of that bracket is to add some reinforcement. We've seen in the past that before the brackets were a thing, that it would cause buckling on the firewall. So that's to help evenly distribute out the force being applied to the firewall. With the cylinder mounted, we're going to go ahead and put in our coach link box, since that does come with this kit. You just want to find a good flat surface to stick that against. I didn't see anything that mentioned orientation being an issue, so if you can just find a good secure spot underneath the dash. I actually found one right up under, kind of on the back side of all these buttons that are up above. There's a big bracket that runs along here, and then the mounting tabs for this all hang out this right side, and I've just got it pressed with the double-sided tape that comes with it to that bracket. Now our kit's going to come with this nice red power wire here. We're going to run that inside the cab along with the 1/4-inch air hose, just so we've got something going to that cylinder from the control unit. Where I went is next to the main bulkhead where the wiring harness is going to come through. There's 2 sets of brake hoses that go through the firewall. I've just pulled that grommet back enough to be able to slide the air hose with the wire taped to the front of it through the vehicle firewall. And you'll see on that back side of the firewall underneath the dash here where we're coming through, and we're just going to get these all secured up out of the way, and then I'll show you how to get those hooked up. Starting with the air hose that we've got under our dash here that's going to be going to the cylinder, I want to start with a new fresh end on that. We've just got the end from the factory, but I want to make sure that that seals into that press-in fitting real well. I wanted to talk about how these ends need to be cut. So I've got these tubing cutters here, and that is preferred, of course, because that's going to give us a nice flush cut with no pinching. You can always use like a razor blade and a piece of wood, or just something that's not going to pinch. We wouldn't want to use any type of wire cutters or anything like that, because it's not going to give us a good clean cut and may cause leaks at our fittings. And with that properly cut, we're just going to plug that right into the quick connect fitting here on our cylinder. And we should be able to go all the way to the back and give that a little tug just to make sure it's secure. And then I'm going to zip tie our extra hose over to this mounting point in the corner here, just so we've got enough clearance that it won't cause any problems. Now we will need to take the power wire that we ran through the firewall, and we're going to go to what is labeled as the violet wire in our instructions, but I would call it orange or brown. There's not too much violet about it, so not sure why it's labeled that way. But we will go ahead and strip back our power wire that's coming through that firewall and get that end a good twist. Keep those wires together. We're going to take one of the blue butt connectors from the kit. Give that a good crimp. And then we're going to take the labeled violet wire that appears to be orange or brown, and that will go to the red wire that is coming through the firewall, and get that crimped. Then we're going to take the red wire from our transmitter box and the blue wire from the cylinder reed switch, and we'll do the exact same process of butt connecting those here. And last connection we need to worry about from our transmitter box, there's going to be the last white wire here, and that'll get a ring terminal that's going to be grounded to somewhere up under the dash. We'll just need to locate something that's going to give us a good ground, maybe even utilizing that bracket that we had for the cylinder. Then I did use the existing self-tapper on the edge of that bracket as our ground spot. It's just easier to do it that way opposed to trying to find something underneath. Then under the dash, we're just going to take all that extra wire, get that bundled up, and then zip tie it securely underneath. Once we've got that, we'll come back up under the hood, and we're going to take our black and orange wires coming from the breakaway switch down there. We're going to need just the orange wire at this time. And then we'll take our power wire that went through the firewall as well. And we're just going to get both of those kind of figured out as far as where they would live next to the battery positive here. And then with those kind of mocked up where we'd like them to live, we'll just go ahead and cut the excess of that red wire and get both of those stripped back. Now we're going to take the fuse connector here. It does just come with the loop, so we'll have to cut that about halfway here. And we'll strip back the ends of that as well. And with those disconnected, we're going to take a yellow heat shrink butt connector, not included with the kit, but you can pick that up from etrailer.com. And we'll go ahead and get one end of that crimped onto the fuse butt connector here. Do make sure you give those ends a good twist. Keep them from coming apart. Then we're going to take the orange wire from the breakaway switch and that red power wire that run into the cab. We'll go ahead and just twist both of those together on one end here. And we'll put that in the other end of our yellow butt connector to the fused link and crimp that down. And then we'll just want to go ahead and heat shrink that down to keep out any debris or corrosion. Now we're going to take a ring terminal here, again not included with the kit. They only give you the one for the ground inside. And then we'll crimp this down as well. And then what will hold on our positive here is just this little 10mm nut at the end. So we'll pull that off, throw on our ring terminal here, and put that nut back where it was and tighten up. And then just as a tip, you may want to have the negative disconnected. It'll just keep from any sparks or accidents from happening where you'd short out the vehicle. Now we'll want to take either one of the two black wires coming out of our control box here. We'll just set one off to the side for the moment being, and then grab the black wire out of the orange and black pair coming from our breakaway switch. And then we'll just add another butt connector to that. I've got one of our blue heat shrink ones, again not included with the kit. Please do check the website for those. And we'll crimp one into our black wire from the switch. And then the other end to that black wire from the controller. And again, we're going to heat shrink that down. And then last but not least for our wiring, we're going to have that final black wire coming out of the control box. That will just get a ring terminal. And we'll give that a good crimp here. And then there is a factory ground here with a 10mm head next to the fuse box where we mounted the controller, and we'll just use that as our ground. Now following that same power wire that we've got coming up front through the firewall, I'm going to route this 1/4-inch hose to our air out duct. So this one here on the right, if you're facing that direction, our out duct, again, we'll want to make sure the end of this hose is cut nice and flush. And then we'll press that into our fitting and just give it a good tug to make sure it's snug. We are going to zip tie up not only the wire, but that 1/4-inch line there as well. Then we're going to run our 1/4-inch line just following that black and orange wire down to the fitting that's going to be our connector for the air coming from the RV. And so of course we'll just snip that in to make sure it's nice and flush, and then plug that into the quick connect on the back of here. And then that's the same exact fitting as all the other ones we've dealt with so far. Just push in and then give that a nice firm tug to make sure it stays where it's supposed to, and we'll wrap that up to the controller. Then we're going to take our snip side here towards the controller and plug that into the air in fitting. Again, going to the bottom and then giving that a nice firm tug to make sure it's secure. Now we will need to insert our 2 check valves into the vacuum system and get us hooked up to our controller from the factory vehicle vacuum system there. So I've made this little connector here. We've just got the T at one end, a little 2-inch piece of the provided hose, and then our check valve. We're going to make sure the black is going towards the engine. So we followed the line here, and that one goes to the engine, and we can see that one goes to the booster. So I've got that cut. We're just going to put our clamps on the factory hose to make sure those hold. And we'll insert our T fitting in to start. And then we'll just take our hose here. We do have another check valve with the black facing the controller here, just the same way as we did towards the engine. and that'll be our final connection here. Now we're just going to go through, tidy up all of the wiring, make sure our hose clamps are nice and snug, and that's going to complete the engine bay part. And then we're going to add the 10 amp fuse into the system. Now for all our coach hookups, we're going to need to hook up to our supply air and metered air. I wanted to talk again about our press-in fittings because it's going to come with 5/8 and 1/2 inch fittings that will fit onto the existing lines there. Now this will work for our supply line. Every single vehicle is going to be a little different, but we found that on this particular vehicle for our 5/8 line, it does take the one out of the kit. I had to build something for the other line that runs the metered air, so I ended up using this brass T fitting and then some push-on fittings as well, and then the kit comes with this 1/4 inch for what would be a bung on the bottom of your module that runs all the air supply, but we're just going to use it in this T fitting to be able to hook up to those quarter lines. But let's hop under the vehicle real quick. It's going to be pretty tight, so there's not a lot of room to see what we have going on, but I'll try to show you as best as possible. So we'll see under here, I've got 2 sets of fittings. The top one is going to be our metered air going to the tank, and then the bottom our supply line. So again, you'll see where I had to create the fitting for that top line because the kit did not come with that particular size of push-on. So we've gotten that all done. Again, you want to treat that like we did on the 1/4 inch lines and cut those as flush as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting leaks throughout the rest of the process. That being said, once we've got that up there, we're going to come over to our tank, just running these nice 1/4 inch lines, going either following existing lines like we've done here, where we've got a nice big harness that we're following down for our metered air. Then we've got kind of the same situation with our supply line. Then I did find a nice safe place for our tank here to live. I've got that back towards the air dryer, just kind of on the frame rail. So it's going to be up to you and what you're able to find as far as space. Of course, we want to avoid the exhaust or any moving parts. And then hooking up the lines, starting with our bottom line here, I've got this going to our feed that will supply the towed vehicle. And then this side line here going into the relay. This is coming from our metered air. And then our supply line is actually the last fitting that's going to be on top of the tank just by itself. So easiest way is to remember there's 2 fittings on this end, which will be our metered air at the relay. And then coming out of the relay, we've got our supply going back to the towed vehicle. And just on the one end by itself, we've got our supply line coming from the RV's air supply. Of course, each manufacturer is going to be a little different, so make sure you follow that instruction manual if you don't have a Spartan like we do here. Since we're starting from the front of the system, working our way back, that last connection point is going to be this fitting here that we'll need to just secure to either the hitch or something at the rear of the vehicle. So we've got our nice hookup for the supply line to our towed vehicle. Now, of course, we've got everything hooked up now just so we can test the system. We're going to do some minor adjustments between the cylinder and getting that reed switch figured out. Sometimes you'll have a situation where the light stays on in the cab and everything seems to be functioning correctly. So let's go through that and kind of take a look at how to properly adjust for your coach link. One of your adjustment points is going to be this reed switch here. And you'll see it is like a hose clamp that's wrapped around the cylinder. There's a teeny tiny little Phillips head right on top of that hose clamp that you're going to loosen up. And once that's loosened up, it'll allow you to slide that reed switch back or forth. And that may be one of the adjustments if your coach link light is staying on that will need to happen. If you find that the reed switch is not lit up when in the resting position, that may not be the adjustment that you need to fix. In which case you can always loosen the bracket here up and adjust the cylinder so you've got proper tension of the cable. We've got it set up pretty much how you would want it, so it's going to have tension but just a little bit of slack in there. You should be able to feel that release, and you can kind of hear that magnet if you listen real close. And then one good way to test it is to come up to the breakaway cable here at the front of the vehicle and pull that switch, and that should engage the brakes. And then we're going to come up to the front of the RV. We're going to go ahead and plug in our coach link to the 12 volt that we've got. And then you'll see, just as a good test, you can always apply the brakes. That light should come on, and then it will turn back off when they are no longer applied. And that's going to conclude the installation and look at of our Demco Air Force One on our 2023 Subaru Crosstrek. My name's Ian with eTrailer. Thank you for watching.